Now, I've experimented with a lot of Kagero decks that have been fun to play with and some not so much. But this one definitely is something interesting. I didn't even remember that it existed. What is up, you guys, and welcome back to the Cardfight Vanguard channel. In today's video, we'll be doing a deck profile on Dragon Monk Son Goku for V Premium. Now, if you guys don't know what this deck is, I don't blame you. I forgot about it myself. This deck is a Kagero-based deck that takes advantage of the retrain for Dragon Monk Goku, which gives you effects based on what you drive check, and your abilities go from there. Now, building for this deck has been really interesting. It's actually been a struggle here and there because what the Vanguard wants to do is very unique for Kagero, and I actually think that this card in the past has potential, and when Kagero finally gets its promo support, hopefully that is generic for everything to work, it can bring this deck back to life. But Goku has an interesting style of play, there's really a lot of luck factor into it, and it's a very Vanguard-centric deck that a lot of other cards in Kagero that are older you can actually bring back and incorporate with this card. Now, Goku has been a really fun deck that I've been experimenting with for the last 2.5 weeks, and I'm ready to show you guys my build. But before I go ahead and move on over to camera 2, if you guys enjoy content such as this, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Don't forget to hit that notification bell so you guys are always up to date on my newest videos coming out. Alright, you guys, so we get started off with the grade 3s. We have 4 copies of the hero himself, Dragon Monk Son Goku. So Dragon Monk Son Goku does have a handful of effects, but this card essentially states +1 drive, the triple skills you get based off what you drive check. And to be honest, the best thing about this card is that due to its variety of abilities, all of them do and handle a situation that is very welcome to wherever you pull. Goku being a Vanguard that has the ability to itself +1 drive on top of all the auto abilities you get after its skill actually does come up a lot. There are situations where in card fights you are able to dictate whether or not which way you want to build this deck around and base your playstyle off of that. Now for this deck particularly, I am focusing on doing a multi-attack strategy with Goku and Dauntless Drive Dragon because the consistency between those two as well as the multiple Vanguard attacks make this deck work out very well. Kagero not having the strongest rear guards does hurt this deck in terms of targets for his abilities, but because of the new cards that have come out from V-Clan Collection about a few months ago now, have given it some solid choices. Prior to when this card came out, I didn't feel like experimenting with it only because I forgot it existed, but 2, I didn't think of any solid deck builds for it that could work. But after spending time with this card and choosing certain units that actually benefit from being on the Force 1 or the Force 2, getting power themselves, I've incorporated units that actually work out well with its restanding effect. The first ability does tie into the ability of the other cards as well, which will all be important, which is a big deal because you want to make sure that every skill that Goku has makes your other cards work better. The biggest weakness about this card is that due to the inconsistency of its abilities and the fact that you don't get each skill per drive check does hurt, and it is kind of weird. I wish that they changed the ability to where you gain the effect per every unit you drive checked with that grade, so that this way you could, for example, do full-on board wipes. If you just get all grade 3s, you could restand multiple cards if you got grade 2s. That would have made Goku a lot better and honestly way more playable than what it is now. Because for Counterblast 2, which essentially is what this card does for all of its abilities, it's a lot. While you are given a lot of skills, it is at random and you're honestly relying on the way you deck build and the luck of the draw to assist you with the second auto ability. However, even with all those flaws behind it, Goku is still a very solid Vanguard that you can pick. Its game strategy is very linear and has a lot of solid support to make it work. For my next grade 3, I am playing 4 copies of Dauntless Drive Dragon. Now, Dauntless Drive Dragon is the MVP of every generic Kagero deck. Having a Vanguard that can give you a restand on the first attack as well as extra power and then apply it to the next Vanguard, perfection. This card in this particular deck is actually a key piece to your winning strategy, and for Goku specifically, this is the only way or one of the few ways that you can win your game without trying to play beatdown. Your goal is to ride Dauntless, survive the turn that you're on Dauntless first, then go into Goku, get 2 Vanguard attacks, and then apply Goku's effect multiple times. That is the winning image of this deck because Goku's second ability states that you gain all of the effects at the end of the battle this unit attacked on the Vanguard circle. So once you swing once, if you like the drive checks that you had and you need to use them, you can use that counterblast and activate all of the abilities, and then you swing twice again, and then you can do the same thing again. This is how we improve the consistency of Goku because on top of the +1 drive that we get until the end of the turn, which means you only have to use a skill once, you're able to have a 6 drive check Vanguard attack that swings twice and stacks power onto a rear guard if you meet the conditions for Dauntless's first ability, because remember, all of the abilities get passed on to this card. It stacks power, it gives high value restands, and it makes your rear guards a lot scarier, especially with the way that the meta is now. The only problem with this deck is that because we are waiting on Dauntless for a turn, we are a slower deck, and then Goku's inconsistency does hurt himself as well. But combined with these and the 6 drive checks, you have a high chance of seeing the piece that you want to activate with Goku's ability and take full advantage of your Dauntless Drive Dragon skills. For my last grade 3, I am playing 2 copies of my favorite card, Blazing Flare Dragon. Now, Blazing Flare Dragon has just proven itself to be the best grade 3 generic rear guard for all Kagero decks. Being able to Soul Blast one and then retire your opponent's rear guards and get power and soul charge from that is fantastic. This card is self-sufficient and also lets you retire rear guards without using Counterblast, which is important for this deck because Goku does cost 2 CB if you want to use the second ability if available to. So making sure that we have as much open CB as possible for us and for our other skills is a big deal, as well as the fact that because this card is a 23k based unit and you have it on a Force 1 marker and you get to restand it, you have a 33k swing easy on the rear guard circle. So it's a strong rear guard that you can use. It's not a bad secondary Vanguard if you are in a really horrible situation, and it's just overall a solid piece that improves the offense of what Goku wants to do. And it retires, which is very important because we are trying to play a slow game with this deck since we want our Dauntless to survive on that turn and then have pieces to go into for our Goku turn. Moving on to my grade 2s, I am playing 4 copies of Break Breath Dragon. Break Breath Dragon is just the best ride target that we have for Kagero at the moment. This card does not use CB, which again is important for Goku, so Berserk Dragon was off the table, but I still wanted resources and I still wanted to retire if need be to slow my opponent down as much as possible because of the amazing boards people are building up with their current decks. Break Breath Dragon is a great rearguard piece as well, as this card will add to your hand, which is something that we don't do a lot in this deck. There's not a lot of extra drawing besides maybe searching and filtering, so therefore getting that extra piece to your hand by having this card be retired is perfectly fine. You're going to put something new in front of the board anyway to take its place, so therefore you're just filtering out for more pieces that you might want later in the deck. And because Goku does require us to have another grade 3 in hand prior to using its ability, it's a great ride target. It's also a great rearguard target that helps us filter our deck for other pieces and get more cards back into our hand later in the game. For my next grade 3, I'm playing 3 copies of Torrid Cannon Dragon. Goku does not draw a lot of cards, so for that particular reason, Goku and Dauntless together expel a lot of cards from your hand. We play extra draw triggers in the deck to mitigate that issue, but Torrid Cannon Dragon is a great way of knocking pieces off board, recycling certain normal unit targets, which is important because Goku's effect is based off a grade, and if we shuffle, we increase our chance of seeing that grade even higher, and then drawing you a card. It's a body you can just have on the board anywhere at any time, and then start adding cards to your hand if you're in the predicament needed to take full advantage of its abilities. The recycling of the normal unit as well as getting the retire and the draw, all of these help at any period in the later game, which is where the deck really shines. And then making its debut on the channel after a long hiatus is 3 copies of Bellicosity Dragon. Now, Bellicosity Dragon is an older card, so if you don't know what it does, I don't blame you. Bellicosity Dragon simply has the effect to get 5,000 power when one of your opponent's rear guards is retired. Now, the reason why I'm putting this card back in the Goku deck is because Goku's second, third ability work out very well with a card such as this that can amass a lot of power. Bellicosity Dragon is a unit that I have not played in a very long time in Kagero, but for this deck, it actually works out very well. Goku's effect to restand a unit, get 10,000 power, and retire 2 rear guards all stack up very well on this card. Because you're retiring during the battle phase as well, your opponent cannot plan around that because they don't know if you'll pull a grade 3, but it's a lot of power that gets stacked into your Bellicosity Dragon to make really solid magic numbers. This card easily reaches over 35,000 on its own. You just need to retire 3 and put on a Force 1, and it becomes a very solid attacker. I think that in this deck particularly, I liked it more than any other deck simply for the fact that Kagero does not have the best grade 2 rear guard units that I wanted to use. We do have the guard restrict card, but it's a grade 3 and I want to see more grade 2s in this deck, and then the grade 2 guard restrict that has the ability for the only allowing grade 0s to block it. I thought that card was fine, but if I'm ever in a predicament where I cannot retire en masse and my opponent is just building full on boards, then that card becomes useless because you only get the effect if your opponent has 0 rear guards. And that's not always a guarantee with this deck, so therefore I wanted to play a card that would gain a lot of power and just be a really solid rearguard for the deck without costing me a lot of resources because again, Goku's an expensive card. And that's where this card came in. Now obviously, if you pick up Goku or you play Goku differently, you can replace this with a lot of things, but I personally like Bellicosity Dragon because it's just a free rearguard that amasses a lot of power. And for my last grade 2, and a tech piece that I've really been enjoying is 2 copies of Burning Horn Dragon. Now, Burning Horn Dragon is actually a really cool tech piece for this deck because it counts itself as a grade 3. And remember, to unlock Goku's first ability, you have to discard a grade 3 from your hand, which will then trigger the second ability, which lets you retire something for a Soul Blast. It's another free card that's essentially a piece extender for the deck, as if I want to use one of my grade 3 rear guards to either ride into or use it as a rear guard piece to attack with, I can simply use Burning Horn Dragon as a card I can discard for it, which means I get to retire and it triggers my Vanguard's ability. Again, this is a tech piece, so you're more than welcome to change it out with anything else that you like, but I actually do appreciate the fact that this card, it counts itself as a grade 3, so I don't have to get rid of my other grade 3 pieces, and the Soul Blast one to retire something is perfect because, again, it doesn't use Counter Blast, which is important for Goku to keep. Moving on to my grade 1s, my grade 1 lineup is very simple. It is 4 copies of Dragonite He-Shot. He-Shot is a very solid grade 1 piece rear guard that is a good rear guard target as well as ride target. This card being able to search the deck out for a grade 3 and essentially get you your 1 card back to your hand from being ridden over is actually very important for this deck. It's very key that we ride Dauntless first before Goku, because Goku by himself is not that strong, so it really does need to be on that Dauntless turn prior to going into Goku to make Goku a lot better after your Dauntless turn. The Counterblast 1, Soul Blast 1 to draw a card does help as well. Again, this deck does not draw a lot of cards, so if I have the resources to spend to get that extra draw, I appreciate it. It's just the most free ride target that Kagura has right now compared to everything else, and the fact that it's a rearguard piece that can do something solid as well makes it even better. For my next grade 1, I'm playing 4 copies of Flame of Hope Airmo. Because our Vanguard uses a Counter Blast of 2, we want to have as much available counter charge in the deck as possible, and Airmo is just a free piece that does that. The power bonus you get from this card as well is actually very welcome because, again, you will be rushing your opponent in the early game to try to control the tempo of the match that you're playing, so it becoming a solid booster as well as a retire piece, I'll make it a solid card for this deck. Finally, for my last grade 1 piece, I'm playing 3 copies of Lava Flow Dragon. Lava Flow Dragon is another grade 3 extender. This is your grade 3 searcher for Kagura. It becomes a solid rear guard at 13k base, making it help hit magic numbers with the columns you'll put it in for potential restands, as well as the fact that it is an on-call effect that we can use at any period in the game to filter our deck out for a grade 3 to get that +1 drive on Dragon Monk Goku. Now for my triggers. So I pretty much spoiled it earlier when explaining the deck, but I am playing 6 critical. I am playing 6 draw triggers. And I am playing, in this deck, surprisingly, 4 copies of the Heal Guardian, and my starter is 1 copy of Lizard Soldier Conroe. Now, because Dauntless is the main ride target prior to Goku, you're going to expel a lot of cards from your hand to get that restand, and you're doing that twice. So for that particular reason, I up my draw triggers in this deck to 6 because I still need to have cards on the board and get extra resources and pieces, and that's what makes this deck very piece reliant. So draw triggers help mitigate that issue. Critical triggers because critical triggers do critical trigger things. I am playing the full playset of Heal Guardians in this deck. Normally I wouldn't do this, but because Goku's ability counts grade 3s and this is a grade 3 and it's a trigger as well, I'm maxing out in this deck because if I do see it, I'll get a trigger effect as well as the third ability to retire 2 rear guards, which could potentially power up my Bellicosity Dragon to get more power, or empty their board so my Blazing Flare Dragon gets more power as well. That and the fact that it increases my grade 3 targets in deck for discarding for Goku's ability, so I can take full advantage of its second skill with the extra drive check that I get from getting rid of this card. And that concludes today's deck profile, guys. Thank you so much for staying tuned throughout the entirety of this video. Now, Goku has definitely been a deck that, like I stated before, after 2.5 weeks of playtesting with it, it's been pretty interesting to work with. I am curious and open to any ideas how we can make the deck better based off what I've showcased for it in my current build, as I always believe that every single deck in V Premium deserves a chance to shine and go out there to work. But that's a discussion for another day. And with that being said, card fighters, I'll see you later. Peace.